We have tried some things that have something to us that is clear in terms of a plan. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different points that you have to follow, guidelines, procedures, etc. You're either wearing masks, or you're always spaced out from other people, or you're the only ones there, or whatever it might be that makes you feel comfortable. So I would just recommend looking at places that you have liked to go in the past and figuring out what about them that they're doing that could make you feel like it's comfortable enough and safe enough for you.
Welcome to Dadsplaining, a weekly chronicle of all the weirdest, messiest, grossest, and funniest parts of fatherhood, hosted by two first-time dads. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And this week, we are going to be talking about transitioning back into normal-ish life. What are we trying again? What are we comfortable with our spouses and the kids and all that? But before we get into all of that, Brandon, how can our listeners reach out to us if they have questions, comments, or if they'd like to be on the show?
Please give us a like or a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dadsplaining Podcast. You can email us, dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com. And then you can catch out this and every episode anywhere you get your podcasts.
Exactly. So, Brandon, what's new in the Spears house this week?
Well, other than some unpleasant bug-related issues, we're just taking them out one by one. But everything's going okay from that perspective. But something we'll talk about on the show today, and why it's our topic, is that my son is finally back in daycare.
Okay.
So he went back for the first time this week in like 3 months, basically. It was like very beginning of March, and now here we are in almost mid-June. So that's been a big change for us. I won't spoil it, but we'll talk a little bit about it today. But other than that, just kind of been figuring out exactly what we're talking about today, this return to life on our side. I did have a funny story. I was trying to remember what it was. Okay, yeah, I wrote it down. So it's something that my son likes to do when he goes to bed. Is he's a lot more vocal now, and he will try to distract you, as all kids do, when it's time for bed, right? Like he wants to do anything but the last and next thing that you need to do as part of getting to bed. And when you're laying him down at the end of the night, he very sweetly will say "love you" in various ways, right? But he does it in like a call and response. He's so smart about it that he's realized that if he says "I love you, Daddy," I'm likely to respond, because I love him, and say "I love you too, Noah." And so he will shout it at me as I'm leaving the room, and he will get louder to be like, "Love you, Daddy." And he'll shout it because he knows sometimes, again, because I have a heart, that I hear it and I want to shout it back at him, and that allows him to continue staying awake or whatever. So I actually walk away from my son shouting "I love you" at me just so that I can attempt to get him to go to sleep. And what's even cuter though about it is that he has what my wife, I think, called his "love you" list, where he will detail lists. He's big on lists now. He'll detail lists of everybody that he knows and loves. And so his "love you" list is usually that he'll say, "Love you, Daddy. Love you, Mommy. Love you, Mimi. Love you, Pops. Love you, Bailey." Because that's my mom, my dad, and their dog. And then he'll say, the best one is he'll say, "Love you, Doubtfire." And we have a robot vacuum, and the name brand of the vacuum is Eufy, which I thought was Euphogenia Doubtfire, and Miss Doubtfire is a maid, and so we call our robot vacuum Mrs. Doubtfire, and he loves it. And so a part of his "love you" list is his parents, his grandparents, the grandparents' dog, and the robot vacuum.
That is the greatest thing.
That's how adorable kids are.
Oh my gosh.
And he'll add in different people depending on who's he's been seeing. If he sees other grandparents, if he sees, my brother, his uncle, or anybody like that. So it's always really sweet when he includes you in his "love you" list.
Wow.
But yeah, that's his thing now. He really loves lists.
That is so awesome. Yeah, we've got a Eufy as well. Ours is named Jeeves, and classic butler name. And David, he likes to watch it. He's not necessarily best friends, and he doesn't say "I love you" to it. It's nothing like that. But he does like to kind of point at it, and I like to tell him that it's sleeping if he wants to play with it, and it's docked and charging. Like, no, it's sleeping. We have to let Jeeves sleep.
Yeah,
and that kind of works.
Too. Yeah.
And he does say night night to it sometimes when it goes back to its charger.
Yeah, it's like the attention span, right? If he lays eyes on an object, he's like, "Oh, that thing!"
Mm-hmm.
Versus if he can't see it, it's out of sight, out of mind. So if we ever don't want him to interact with it, we just kind of wait for it to disappear from view, turn it off, and like kind of hide it from him. Because if
Mm-hmm.
it's in the room, he's going to be interested in it. But yeah, we do the same thing with it sleeping, and sometimes he wants to go over and touch it even when it's sleeping. And so I have to tell him, like, if you see the blinking orange light, which means that it's charging, that means you can't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise he'll try to turn it back on.
I got some updates too, but they're perfectly right in line with this week's topic. So I figure we'll just jump right into it.
Go for it.
It is, if you're listening to this episode after the fact, it is mid-June, June 12th specifically, when we're recording this in the year 2020. And we are 3 months into the COVID-19 pandemic here in the United States and really worldwide. And each state here in the US, for those outside of America, are making their own choices on
Mm-hmm.
how are they reopening, what ways are they going back to normal life, what restrictions are they dropping. And Georgia's been more advanced in doing that than some other states, and it's something that makes parents very nervous. Some
Yeah.
parents, not all parents. And it's for better or for worse. It's debatable kind of what the results are, but that decision is opening some things back up. And
Yep.
Brandon and I have both taken advantage of that in different ways. And so I think what we want to kind of focus on today is, what are we doing with that? How does it make us feel? And what are we still afraid to do, really? And Brandon, you kind of suggested this topic to me last week, and you've got a new
Yeah.
development between last week and this week, so I'll let you kick it off. What is the
Yeah.
one big thing that you guys have started doing again?
Yeah. There's a couple, but I mentioned in the lead-in that we are now back at daycare,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've talked a bit about this, especially because your son has been in daycare. I think uninterrupted, right? Since
Yeah, the
this
whole time.
kind of began. Everything that we kind of talk about is within the lens of, the coronavirus pandemic that's going on. And the reason why we're trying different things is because some things are opening up again, and we're trying to figure out what feels right, what could feel safe. And I will, of course, say what feels safe to us, because I know for a fact there are people who maybe don't want to do what we're suggesting, and we're not suggesting that you have to do any of these things. These are just some things that we've tried out, and I'll try to tell you why it made sense or felt okay to us. And a lot of it, to be honest, kind of has to do with, we just, everyone's tired of not going anywhere. We still feel that we're kind of being as safe as we possibly can, but just realizing that the world's going on and life's going on, and we kind of have to make some choices about what we feel comfortable with as parents. So we started going back to daycare. Our daycare was actually closed for a couple months. Maybe it was more like 4 to 6 weeks, but an extended period they were actually closed and they weren't opening at all. So we didn't even have the option. But then they did open up again maybe a month ago. And at the time, my work situation had changed and I was able to stay home with my son more. And so I kind of continued to be his childcare just because I could. And then when my work situation changed again, it was going to be very difficult to be kind of the sole parent and keeping him at home, because my wife is an essential employee and isn't, can't be home during the day reliably. So we sent him back to daycare, and everything that Jesse's talked about in a lot of episodes is true in terms of how our daycare is handling it. And we're just trying to see that as safe as possible, and ultimately something that we, to the best of our ability, just feel like we kind of have to do, in a sense that if I'm going to work, if my wife's going to work, someone has to take care of our son, and the best option is to put him in daycare, which he'd been in previously, and they're doing it the best they can. So every time we drop him off, they take the kids' temperatures, they take the parents' temperature. Anybody over a certain level, I think it's like 100, you can't come in. And then there's a certain amount of time until you can come back. If you've definitely been diagnosed with COVID, then you have 2 weeks or more. So there's guidelines all around it. But the main check is the temperature on pickup and drop off, and then parents can't take the kids in or pick them up inside. You have to leave them with staff, and they escort them in, and they wear masks, and then hand sanitizer, lots of frequent cleaning, all that kind of stuff. So we finally got to this point, and I bring that up as an example because to me that kind of falls in the category of unfortunately, it just felt like where the world is finally going, in a sense that as work picks back up and I'm able to work again, and my wife's been working the whole time, this is something that a decision had to be made about how we were going to do this. And kind of like what we talked about a long time ago, you make the decisions of you're going to be working parents and you're going to use daycare. That's your lifestyle. That's what you're going to do. So because that is still our lifestyle, that's what we had to do, basically. So that's
Mhm.
that's that's a big one for us. The good news, if you're questioning it as a parent, is that if your kid had gone to daycare, they hopefully will respond mostly like mine, in that he still likes daycare. He has fun. He sees other kids his age. They get to play together. They get to do a lot of activities. We feel good about it because of the reasons that we liked, him going to a daycare in the first place: the socializing, the interaction, the education. He and I spent two, almost 3 months together every day, and I'm not trained as an educator, so I wasn't drilling him with lots of information. And so
Right.
I'm excited that he gets to kind of pick up back where he left off with some of that stuff. They have story time, song time, outdoor play time, all the things that you would want them to have. And he seems to be having a really good time, like he always was at daycare. So there's just kind of like that nice calming feel about it. But then if you are like me, he does cry when we drop him off, almost like he did in the very beginning, because it's like a new experience for him because it's been a couple months. So
Right.
it's been a big development for us. And I know it's something you guys have been doing, kind of throughout, Jesse. So that doesn't sound new to you at all. But I mean,
Hmm.
you guys have obviously felt comfortable in that same vein with doing it this whole time, and probably can relate to the whole kind of had to
Yeah.
feeling that I'm feeling.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like you have to. I don't like to use the phrase "the lesser of two evils" because it's not real. It's not an evil thing,
Yeah.
but it's like you have to compromise at a certain point, and it's not just because you're getting stir crazy and bored in the house. Like it really is kind of we've got to make a living. We don't really have the option to not work anymore, to stay here and raise the kid, and not keep up with our day job.
Right.
So when we made the decision to keep him in daycare, I mean, I'll be honest, at first I was really nervous about it. And every day I was like, okay, are we going to do this again today? Because it was still, I think, late March at that point. There was not a whole lot that was known about the virus. There was not a whole
Right.
lot known about how quickly was it going to spread, nationally, statewide, locally in my, hometown, that kind of thing. And then as time went on, we kept up the decision for a number of reasons. One, because there weren't as many kids in daycare,
Hmm.
because the teachers were being great with communication. They were being great about, safety guidelines and increasing their standards and not letting parents inside the building. And then as time went on, two pieces of information kind of made me more comfortable with it. For one, in the state of Georgia, this is something that I keep up with, and that every state, most states, I think, have this resource. If you go to their Department of Public Health, they'll
Hmm.
have daily numbers that they'll update every day. Here's how many new cases there are. Here's how many hospitalizations. Here's how many deaths. The number that I keep my eye on, and this isn't a recommendation I'm making, this is just my personal comfort level. I look at the death rate every day. And it sounds very morbid to say that, but when you look at the number of new cases every day, you'll see that increase. But that's kind of, I wouldn't say misleading, but that doesn't necessarily correlate with new people catching the disease. That may instead
Hmm.
correlate with more people having access to testing, as states
Yep.
are improving their testing methods and opening up more testing sites, that kind of thing. But the death rate does have, at least as far as I can tell, a direct correlation. If you see a decline in death rate, it may be that fewer people that are extremely sensitive to the disease and maybe become critical from it, that is decreasing, possibly.
Hmm.
So I saw that even in the past month since the state of Georgia began to reopen, I saw that continue to decrease, daily. That number did not peak again, even with people kind of going back out into normal life. So that kind of made me more comfortable. And then the other thing that made me more comfortable was in my hometown, in my area, the suburb of Atlanta that I live in, cases have remained very low. Every few days, someone might pass away from COVID. But it's compared to other counties and cities in the state of Georgia, it has remained low enough to tell me personally that okay, it's not a severe risk if I am acting responsibly and if the people around me are acting responsibly. So that kind of affected my comfort level with it.
Yeah.
So, we kept them in daycare the whole time. They were very safe. They continued to be safe. They wear masks, the whole shebang. This past weekend, we took a family trip, not to a crowded beach, not a spring break kind of thing, but to a cabin in rural Alabama on a lake where it was really just us. And I was able to visit my grandmother on my dad's side, who lives out there for the first time in months, which
Nice.
was really
Yeah.
nice. And that was one of those things where she was hospitalized, not for COVID, but for a broken shoulder about a
Mm-hmm.
month
Mm-hmm.
ago. And the thing that hurt the most about it was because of the crisis, no one could visit her. So she was all
Oh yeah.
alone in that hospital, for weeks. And then getting back home, finally getting to see her family again safely, of course. We had that reunion, and my 2-year-old was very happy to see her. It was, it's just one of those happy moments that, you take your chances, you figure out how to do it safely, and it really pays off. And it was a really nice reunion for us. So, that was kind of the biggest adventure we may have taken lately. Having been in daycare the whole time, not much has changed there. I'm still doing the same safety things that I've been doing the whole time when I'm going out. If I need to go grocery shopping, putting on the mask,
Yep.
trying to wash my hands when I get home, that kind of thing. So that really hasn't changed. And I feel like that's probably the element that shouldn't change, is that,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're willing to go back out into the world and do normal things, it's not any sort of inconvenience to do the little safety things that help you prevent the spread.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm counting on people doing that. I see people doing that. I don't know if it's 50-50, but at least a third of the people
Mm-hmm.
I see in the grocery store are wearing masks. Some of them are even wearing gloves, which is cool. So,
Yeah.
it's
And when you guys talked about going on a vacation, because I have seen something similar where people I'm aware of, people I know, friends of mine, are doing vacations as well. And it may feel like everyone's doing a vacation right now, and
mhm.
it's not because everyone takes vacation at the same time. It's because we're kind of coming out of a period of the full on quarantine, and people are ready to go do things.
Yeah,
But I'm guessing that the reason why you guys felt comfortable with doing that is because you knew you were going somewhere kind of isolated, and you knew who you were going to be with, and you knew that the people you were going to be with had been and are being safe.
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that was, I talked about this a few weeks ago when we talked about seeing my parents again for the first time in 8 weeks. It's like, okay, I know where you've been, I know who you've
Hmm.
been around, and I know that, even that, for instance, my dad being an essential worker in the capacity that he works in, has been working around the same people for the same 8 weeks, and
Right.
none of them have gotten sick. None of them have spread anything to each other. And that tells me, okay, that's probably a calculated risk that I'm willing to take, that kind of
Yep.
thing. It's like, yes, there's always going to be a chance, but when you've been doing it for weeks and weeks and weeks and you haven't seen any hint of it and nothing has changed in that routine, it's, in my mind, okay, that's safe enough for me to be okay with it. So yeah, that was part of the process. It was knowing who we were going to be with, knowing where we were going to be, what we were going to be doing, knowing that we weren't going to any rock concerts or,
Right.
Panama City Beach, anything like
Right.
that.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's the part about this that sucks, is that we are making decisions that we know are risky, have an element of risk, have some amount of risk. And we don't like risk as parents of young kids. We don't want to do anything risky, but the world is what it is right now. This is part of our reality. And we're trying to talk about the things that make us feel like we can enjoy some of life in some ways.
Yeah.
Um, a couple of things that we've done as well that I want to give a mention to.
Hmm.
If people are looking for ideas or want to hear about things that maybe could apply to them that they could think about,
Yeah.
other things that we've done lately is we've gone to our local zoo. We have also gone to a restaurant where we dined in, quote unquote, but the place that we chose is one where we can sit outside on a patio, and obviously tables spaced far away. The staff are wearing masks, etc. And we're there for maybe an hour. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So we've tried that as well, and we have also gone to an indoor playground, which would normally be just the worst idea possible. But has special restrictions in place. where you can only sign up for a private session that is just for your family or you and one other family if you choose, like max of 4 kids, and nobody else is there, and they clean in between sessions. So there's always a caveat, right? And I think that's kind of the key is we have tried some things that have something to us that is clear in terms of a plan. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different points that you have to follow, guidelines, procedures, etc. You're either wearing masks or you're always spaced out from other people, or you're the only ones there in the case of the play place, or whatever it might be that makes you feel comfortable. So I would
Mm-hmm.
just recommend looking at places that you have liked to go in the past and saying, or figuring out what about them that they're doing that could make you feel like it's comfortable enough and safe enough for you to go do. And I think I talked about the zoo. The things that
Yeah.
they're doing is that while it's public and a lot of people can go, and you can't limit it to just you, they do timed entry. A lot of places that are more public spaces are doing that, where you have to sign up for a time slot so that they kind of manage the flow. We thought, again, that the zoo was the perfect fit. It was the first thing we did outside the house was the zoo because it's outdoors. And again, just what we understand, outdoors is your safest option. Being inside in the confined space is less safe. So
Yeah.
outdoor zoo seemed fine. The zoo has indoor exhibits, but they're all closed for that reason. So you have to be outside the whole time. When you kind of roam around and you go up to an animal, there's lots of area to stand, and they have different spaces clearly laid out on the ground that are 6 feet apart. So you know that you're staying away from people, and they have kind of employees managing the flow. And then something that they did at the zoo, which I thought was really smart, that obviously that can't apply everywhere, is that they turned it into completely one way. You go in, you go all the way through, and you come back around, and then you're gone. As soon as you've made a lap, you have to exit. You can't recirculate. And everyone's flowing in one direction. There's no crossing paths or whatever. So I think that worked out really well. Only a few instances where you felt like you were close to anybody, and that was really good. The play place, nobody else was there, like we talked about. The restaurant, you're 6 feet away. We were outside. It was fun, and it was good to be outside, and it was good to eat someplace. Nobody was around. So it's just all about what items on your list of safety guidelines are covered. Do they have a plan? Does it make you feel comfortable? And then anything you can do outside.
Exactly. And one thing that we've done is because there's sort of the not leisure things like but activities that you do with the kids that we're able to kind of get back into now, but then there's also the more administrative side of things. For instance, on our end, yesterday we took David in for a checkup with his ears because he had ear tube surgery. At this point it was a year and a half ago, and we were supposed to go in for an appointment a couple of months ago. And of course, COVID hit. They asked us to reschedule, and this was the date that we chose. I think doctors are starting to open up again now. And that's probably, it's funny. It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you feel like, okay, well, that's got to be the safest place because they're doctors. They know how to handle this. They know how to be safe. And then on the other hand, you're like, oh, I don't want to go in a place where other sick people are. I don't know what I could catch there. So, I don't really know how to feel about it. But what was kind of cool about it was we walk into the lobby. My wife and I both wear our masks, and they ask me to stay in the lobby. And then Ashley goes back into the doctor's office with David. So they're restricting the number of parents that are going to be back in the patient areas. And of course, there's hand sanitizer abounds and all that stuff. But we were glad to have that option because there's certain things that you can push back, non-emergency things, but you can only push them back for so long before you start to get nervous. In the case of ear tube surgery, you don't want to go too long without having those checkups because you want to know, are there any hearing problems developing? Are there more infections happening? And in our case, we were given the all clear. David has great hearing. He just chooses not to listen to us sometimes. So that was a relief to be able to do that again. And, it's also a relief to find that they are doing it safely. And pretty soon we are all going to be probably transitioning back into office life in some capacity. I've been hearing things about when I know exactly. I've been hearing about when I'm going to go back to work. I don't have a firm date yet. I know it's not going to be for at least a month because my employer is giving us 2 weeks heads up, which is important, because parents got to figure out childcare options and commuting and all that stuff. I know that I'm only going to be going into the office twice a week, and they have announced just a slew of safety precautions. I know that I'm going to have to wear my mask everywhere except my own personal office when I'm alone in my office on the
Oh,
days that
wow.
I am going to be in the office. I'm going to have to keep a daily log of like, who have I interacted with? Who have I had
Mm,
face-to-face meetings with? And of course, they're going to be encouraging do it in an email, do it over Microsoft Teams or Zoom or something like that whenever possible. And, of course, a lot of hand sanitizing, a lot of daily and nightly cleaning of the office, because and my wife pointed this out to me because, she is the genius on the human resources side of things, in terms of office management. Here's the thing. If you go back to your office and one person gets sick, that company is then going to have to clean the entire office. And that can cost,
yeah,
tens of thousands of dollars to do every time
yeah.
that happens. So, I think most employers, if they're smart, are not going to be taking any chances. And I'm excited to see that they're, that in my case, that they're doing this safely. And I'm hoping that a lot of employers are going to be doing the same thing.
All right. Well, the last thing that I was thinking about that I wanted to mention as well is that if you've got kids, and I've seen some other parents talking about this on, like neighborhood groups and things like that, they want to hang out with other kids. I've been fortunate. I've been home with my son, so we've just been buddies the whole time. But we had our first play date ever in months this past week, and it just went phenomenally well. And of course, the caveat is the same that we've had this entire episode, that like you have to feel comfortable with who your kid's playing with and therefore who they're exposed to, and then by extension you're exposed to. So what made sense for us about this is that my son was going back to daycare, as I talked about, and one of our friends has a son as well in the same daycare class. And so we thought, hey, they're going to be going to school together, so they're already going to be with each other, and therefore, if we're being honest, exposed to one another, and therefore we're exposed to their people, they're exposed to our people. So risk, if you will, is already there and is already going to be the same. So it should be okay to get together with them anyway, because they're together at school. They can be together outside of school. So I know that other parents have I've seen done similar things where like neighborhood friends or school friends or people that closely and how safe they're being, or that that you're already seeing regularly, like there's some ways you can kind of work within that structure, and at least just what seems to make sense as far as what could work. But
Yeah.
another reason why I wanted to mention it is because of the whole going back to school thing. We were really nervous about it. Jesse mentioned that he's been nervous about it since the beginning, even though his son is in it the whole time. Like there's always risk, and it doesn't feel good to have that as a parent. We were just worried about him not being with us. I was just sad that he was gone and that we weren't day-to-day buddies all day long anymore. But then, we wondered if he was going to hate it or not like it, like all the fears that we had before we ever started daycare. Like, what if he doesn't get along with anyone? What if he doesn't have fun? What if he's crying the whole time? And so we thought we'd get together with his school buddy before school started, before he went back to school, and like reintroduced them to the thought of like, you have a friend, you can play with your friend, then you're going to see each other at school and you're going to play at school. And like, I don't know. It was just great. Like our kids are, my son's 2 years and 3 months almost. Yours is a few months older than that.
Hmm.
So of course, like kid play date interaction varies greatly in the early goings where they don't maybe play together. But it's been a while since he's played with any kids, and I was just blown away by how much fun he had
Yeah.
playing with another kid. And if you go to daycare, you're not with them. You don't see what they're actually like interacting with other kids too much. And I guess my son's just not quite old enough where I'd seen him actually play with other kids directly. What was it that it was referenced as? Parallel playing, where
Oh,
they're
yeah.
playing together side by side.
Yeah. Just not necessarily
Where
with
they're
each
not
other.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not like playing the same thing because they're too young to quite get collaborative player games or anything like that, but they're playing in the same space together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just adorable. It was probably one of the cutest things I've ever seen. Also, I got to tell you, two kids, not just one kid that's cute, but two kids that are cute, double the cuteness.
Oh yeah.
And they're playing together. And like after the first half hour awkward first date stuff
Mm-hmm.
where like they hadn't been around each other in a long time and they didn't really interact, the wall just shatters, and they're like sharing cars, they're playing on the racetrack together, they're running through the little tunnel things that you have set up.
Mm-hmm.
They're chasing after each other. We spent a half hour hopping around the room together, like listening to songs. Like it was just a great moment. And I got to tell you, like I was super worried and debating up until the last minute if we were going to send him back to school or not. And like having that play date sold it for us. We were
Yeah.
like, he needs to be with other kids. He needs to socialize. He wants to do this. He has so much fun doing it. If we can feel comfortable enough about it, then he's going to have a great time. And so when we dropped him off, I was just like, I know what the end result is going to be. He's going to have a great time and he's going to love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think what's been so surprising to me is how they don't skip a beat, even having been home alone for so long. I mean, David was at daycare the whole time, but having
Mm-hmm.
not seen family for weeks on end, when we finally did see family again, he was even more social than he was before. There was no
Yeah.
awkwardness. He was very friendly, very willing to play. I mean, even playing with his older and younger cousins, which was not really something he was super open to before. He was getting right into it and throwing a ball around and chasing his
Nice.
cousins around the house. And it was really cool. And it's just a testament to how these kids, they know more than we think we know. And it's
Yeah.
almost like some of this is just natural. Like,
Yeah.
we worry, oh, if we don't encourage them to socialize, are they going to do it? I think some of this stuff is just innate, being the social animals that we are. We are just
Mm-hmm.
going to cleave to that tendency to hang out with people and socialize with people and play with people. I think some of that just comes naturally to kids just being
Mm-hmm.
kids. That was the cool thing. And we actually just got a comment from Karina, who was a former guest of the show, along the
Yeah.
same lines. She says, Jace is back to school in an extended school year. Special needs setting, and it's making a huge difference. He's happier now that he's peopling again. And that's the
Great.
thing, like kids, they need this stuff to an extent, and they have us
Mm-hmm.
in the meantime, and like I said a couple of weeks ago, for the few months that we're home alone and it's just you and your spouse and the kid, they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But when that time comes and they get back into the swing of things, I think the exciting thing that we've both seen is that they fall right back into it and they love being
Mm-hmm.
around those kids again, maybe even more than before because they
Yeah.
miss it and it's a special thing.
They crave
um,
it too. Yeah.
Totally,
Which
absolutely.
they
So
can't tell us, but
right,
and maybe they didn't even know it themselves because like their
exactly.
emotional depth isn't there yet. But yeah, they just are like, oh my God. And what I loved about it was somebody who had as much energy as my son, which isn't me,
Hmm.
another small 2-year-old,
Right.
guess what, has unlimited energy, just like my
Hmm.
son does.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to worry about petering out and him just being like, all right, come on. Like, we were just having
Yeah.
fun. What are you doing doubled over on the floor now?
But
Well, I'm a
really,
30-year-old man and I don't have the energy I had when I was 2 years old. Give me a
if
break.
I sit down, my son's favorite, one of his first and favorite phrases was "Get up, daddy." That'll make it feel old
No
and
rest for the
slow.
weary. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah. So yeah, I guess if there's a moral to this story, it's hard to apply a one size fits all solution. But if and when parents, you are ready to dip your toes back into the pre-COVID life in whatever way that you can. I mean, we're not post-COVID. We're still in the middle of this thing.
Hmm.
So there's still precautions that you got to take. But there are some serious benefits, like emotionally and just kind of getting back into a normal routine if you can find safe ways to do it. So, check up on those organizations and businesses that you frequented before the pandemic to see what are they open now? What are their hours? What are they doing to stay safe? I mean, I've seen coffee shops that I've gone into have giant plexiglass windows between you and the cashier, and they'll hand you a
Yep.
little hand sanitizer under the glass. It's not going to be that way for everybody, but I think a lot of people are playing it safe and they're being smart and responsible because in general, people are not stupid. I think, I try to be optimistic. I can't always be, but look into it. I think that it's okay to at least do a little research and start dipping back in. So we got a question in the comment section during the show today. Brad asks, how are you dealing with the naps going away? My daughter is going through a sleep regression right now, making it difficult to get through a full night without her waking up. This is actually great. Brad is referencing a post that I made in the Dadsplaining parenting group on Facebook that our 2-year-old is, I think he's deciding that he's just done with naps. And Brad, we're not dealing with it. We're not dealing with it well at all. If anyone listening has any advice, would greatly appreciate it. But it's tough. We try to put him down for a nap, and sometimes it works, but when it doesn't, we just pick him back up and bring him back downstairs and just tag team. Like, I'll hang out with him while my wife works, and then vice versa. So that's all I can say at this point. Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, I've got a thought. It sounds like he's referencing a sleep regression in the middle of the night.
Let's see.
That the part of the question you were mentioning?
Oh, you know what? It does look like that. Okay, he was asking me about the naps, and then he's talking about his problem is in the nights. Yeah, wow.
Okay,
oh, man,
so he's just checking in on you, Jesse. But yeah, we don't know yet about the naps. That sounds terrifying. I'm not looking forward to that. There was one day my son didn't nap, and I almost died, and that's really sad to say. But we're weak. The nighttime thing, we have some thoughts, and I swear we have an episode talking about nighttime routines. I would check that. I would check that out if you haven't. I'm sure you're a loyal listener, Brad, so you probably already have.
Yes.
Because everyone listens to every episode all the way through. But from my experience, anytime we had a sleep regression where they had been on a plan and then they stopped, first of all, it's kind of a known. It just happens. It sucks. There's a couple usually moments, and you just have to try to knuckle down and reintroduce the routine, and just whatever worked the first time, try to go back to it again. Like we did the like a version of the cry it out Ferber method of you put them down, they cry, you wait a minute, you go back, they keep crying, you wait 3 minutes, you go back, then you wait 5 minutes, then you wait 10 minutes or whatever, and you try to space it out until they fall asleep. That just happened to be what worked for us. Hopefully, if you've had something that works, I would just say go back to it again and just reintroduce it again and keep trying it until it sticks, because it's just kind of the way of the regression is like they have to relearn what they learned previously. It can take time. Hopefully you're lucky, like some of us, sorry, I was pretty lucky. Any regression, he would pick it back up in a couple of days, just like my son did the first time. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, I second that notion. Yeah, just keep on repetition. I think it does work. Keep on trying what has worked for you before. Get it. It may take several tries for them to realize, okay, this is the way things are. Because it's the same thing with dinner, the mealtime routine, after they see something on their plate 7 nights in a row, eventually they're going to reach out and try it. So it's don't give up. That's sometimes not the advice that you want to hear, but just keep doing what you're doing, and it will pass. All these phases will pass. I think we just have to remind ourselves of that from time to time. Like, this is just one little phase. It's not going to be forever. It feels like forever, but it's going to get better. And then there are going to be other problems for us to solve. So hang in there, Brad. We are right there with you. And send us a message and let us know if that helps, and if there's anything else we can do to help you out. Thanks for commenting. So that'll do it for this week's episode of Dadsplaining. Brandon, between this week and next, if our listeners want to reach out to us, where can they find us?
You can reach us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Please give us a like or a follow there at Dadsplaining Podcast. You can send us an email directly, dadsplainingpodcast@gmail.com. And you can check out this and every episode anywhere you get your podcasts.
We publish new episodes every Monday, usually in the morning, but, we'll play things by ear for a little while. If you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, we would be so grateful if you could leave us a 5-star rating and even a review. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to hear more of. We're open to all of it. Be sure to subscribe to us on whatever platform you listen to so that you can get these episodes directly in your feed every week, and you don't have to download them before you hit the road. And be social. Reach out to us. We've got a parenting group on Facebook. Look up Dadsplaining, a parenting group, where you can hang out with us, talk to us, swap tips, and ask questions with other parents. We're a small group, but we're growing, and we would love to have you. So, Brandon, what are we talking about next week?
So we thought it would be fun. Also, of the moment, there's been a lot of conversation around high school, college, and graduations for people, and the measures that you have to go through in the COVID times, people not having graduations or different graduations. So it just got me thinking, might be fun if Jesse and I do a quick flashback on our high school and college times in solidarity with our friends who are graduating.
Be sure to tune in next week for all that fun stuff. And until then, I'm Jesse.
And I'm Brandon.
And hey, Brandon, did I tell you that I bought a pen that can write underwater?
Oh, wow. How does it do that?
Well, it's not just underwater. It writes a lot of other words, too.
Oh, good. It's a full-service pen. Spells and everything.
That wonderful dad joke brought to you by Twitter. We'll see you folks next week.
The advice and opinions expressed on Dadsplaining are solely those of its hosts and guests and should not be substituted for the advice of professionals. If you have a serious concern about the health or development of your child, please consult with your pediatrician. If you're experiencing an emergency, please call 911. Don't listen to us. We're really just good for dad jokes. If you're enjoying Dadsplaining, you might enjoy this other podcast from our friends here at WSB Radio.
Hello, friends. This is Jared Yamamoto from the Power Pod, and we are a weekly recap show where we cover the current events of the week. And of course, during these times, COVID-19 is on everybody's mind. We will cover the good, the bad, and the ugly regarding this crisis. We will be serious with the coronavirus, but we will also find ways to have fun with it as well. So be sure to check us out Saturdays from 11 to noon and Sunday mornings from 9 to 11 on 98.7 FM and AM 1340 WGAU, or grab the Power Pod podcast on any of your favorite podcast providers or your favorite smart speaker.